What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And today I have a really interesting conversation, a snippet from the Joe Rogan podcast. He's speaking with AJ from the Y Files. The Y Files is one of my favorite channels on YouTube. It talks about everything that we talked about here and more. But I love the subject that they talk about today because it's tied in with one of my favorite subjects, and that's giant. But I want you to hear this story, and it's really interesting because, you know, whenever we talk about these things, it's either cuckoo land or it's there's no in between, really. But I love this conversation. It's about the Grand Canyon and something that maybe you didn't know about the Grand Canyon. They're going to discuss it. Stick around. Let's get into this conversation. But before we get into it, I want you to click like and subscribe this channel. Support my channel so I can continue doing these videos for you. I love this stuff. Now, let's get into it.
Well, the whole Grand Canyon thing is bananas. Like, there's areas of the Grand Canyon you cannot explore.
You cannot go. You cannot fly over.
Right.
And you can't fly under the rim. Yet when you go to those bad places, suddenly a white plane flies over under the rim, black helicopters show up. I showed on my episode. I show the black helicopters.
I don't know if a lot of you understand this, but there's a lot of mystery in the Grand Canyon. A lot of things that go way back and some archaeology that doesn't belong there. Let's continue.
Showing up. Like, they do show.
Yeah. Like, they are protecting something.
Something.
It's not as simple as this is a dangerous area, because you can go to any dangerous area.
You go just to the normal tourist area. It's like, be careful. People fall. 2 people a year fall.
Yeah, someone fell recently.
They did?
Yeah, an influencer. Of course, taking a selfie. But the Grand Canyon, there's been these crazy stories of people finding these these caverns with like Egyptian artwork and hieroglyphics and these stories of artifacts that have been removed from there.
And that story, guys, has been around for a long time. Some of you have heard them, you know, if you've been curious about these types of things, but that story's been around. Stephen Quayle, he wrote a book about giants, and he discussed that in his book, that there were some discoveries in the Grand Canyon that were Egyptian-like. And, you know, it's a story that's been going around for many, many years, so many decades.
So the story is, it shows up, I believe, in like the Phoenix Gazette. It's 1903 or so. And the explorer is G.E. Kincaid, and he's going down, he's looking for gold deposits or whatever. This is just before Teddy Roosevelt made the Grand Canyon a preserve. He was a naturalist. So he finds these steps that are clearly man-made. He follows the steps up, and there's a cave, and he goes in there, and he describes hieroglyphics that look Egyptian but are not quite. He finds a statue that he describes as like Buddha-like, not Egyptian, not human, but sort of like Buddha, and all these weapons, shields, gold, all sorts of stuff. He keeps going. He finds a deserted city in the caves, and all these tunnels and caverns go everywhere, and he's trying to map everything. He comes out, and he goes back to town, and he gathers together a group that we're going to go find this stuff again. And people are excited about it. And a couple of weeks go by, and everyone's gathered to go on the expedition. He never shows. The expedition goes nowhere, and that's really the last we've heard of it.
Well, and is there any photographs or anything? No.
There never is of this stuff.
Right, just descriptions.
Just a great story.
Well, the great part of the story is the fact that you actually can't go there.
Yeah, I think sometimes we live in this digital age, right? And like, there's got to be a picture, there's got to be some sort of media for it, but we're talking 1908. The only thing that maybe you could get is an old photo, you know, that probably disintegrated over time, newspapers that maybe a story or whatnot that people forgot and didn't archive. But nevertheless, as Joe and AJ are saying here, you can't go there. But why? Why is that?
And the idea that there's an area where the military is protecting people from being foolish, that doesn't make any sense.
Nobody asks why.
Right.
Like, nobody asks why. It really bothers me about that story and all of these, whether it's disclosure or whatever. I don't hear anyone asking why. Well, they won't let us. Well, who's they? Right. Someone's in charge of stuff that's not the president.
Right.
Or Congress. So who is it? So, you know,
is it possible there's some sort of a government installation down there somewhere?
You know, it's all going to be woo-woo conspiracy stuff, or it's real, or G.E. Kincaid found something and someone got to him.
But if G.E. Kincaid found something, why would they want to hide some ancient civilization discovery, particularly in the early 1900s? Like, why? For what reason?
I don't know why Graham Hancock is marginalized now.
Right, but that wouldn't you think that there's like less of a grip on that stuff in the 1900s?
No, I don't think so. I think the 1900s was a new 100 years for the United States. Some discovery that could really impact the narrative. Of course it would. It would raise more uncertainties in the population, question whatever social structures that are there in history. I think even back then that was important. I think that was always been a thing in people in power or governments, is to control the narrative. Maybe not so much back then, but why wouldn't they?
Yes.
Early 1900s?
I would think so.
Yeah.
So my guess would be treasure and money. That would be my guess. Is it shows up in the paper. The government goes down there, like, there's a lot of stuff down here. Let's grab it, send it to the Smithsonian, who keeps 99% of the stuff under wraps. They have, a billion items that nobody can see. And then that's the end of it.
Yeah, but what the fuck? Which I would love to know the official reason. See if you can Google. Is there an official reason why you're not allowed to go to certain areas of the Grand Canyon?
They use a VPN there, brother.
The story, I was looking at an article about the original article, and it says that the two guys mentioned might not have even existed.
Right.
There's no evidence of them.
G.E. Kincaid?
And
Right.
another guy named S.A. Jordan.
Oh, so it might be just a story that someone printed? Some horseshit?
Yeah, when I was looking into one of these things before, I found something explaining that back in the early 1900s, when newspapers were a really popular thing to read, I don't know if it was like a game or if there was actual prizes people would play or like amongst themselves to try to get fake stories printed. If you could get the craziest story printed, you win like $500 or.
I might be wrong, but I think Jordan was connected to the Smithsonian, at least according to the story.
I pulled this from the Smithsonian debunk, which, I mean, obviously they would if this is the way we're going to go with it, but them debunking this, and they gave two links, one to the original 1909 article and one to a 2008 update, and that's where I was pulling that from.
I don't trust the Smithsonian. They're exempt from all kinds of stuff.
Yeah?
Well, like there's a law passed not too long ago that if you have Native American artifacts that are important to that culture, especially burial artifacts, they must be returned. Unless you're the Smithsonian, then
They're allowed to hold on to
then
them?
you can make a case that you don't have to give it back.
How do they have so much power?
It's a government agency.
Smithsonian is a government. Oh, I didn't even know. I thought it was.
Controlling history, controlling artifacts. I mean, what do you think would happen if all of a sudden the Smithsonian actually confirmed that there is some sort of Egyptian hieroglyphics and all kinds of historical artifacts that shouldn't be there? What would that do to our reality? Would it help it? Would it hurt it? What do you think?
It was a private agency. So there's no official story as to why this area of the Grand Canyon is off limits.
For your safety.
The
is all
forbidden zone, they call it.
Yeah, that's all I can find.
That's
I'm looking
fucking
into
weird.
that.
That's fucking weird. That this story comes from the very area that's forbidden. That's fucking weird.
I think
What are the odds?
I
you
don't believe in coincidences, so a lot of these stories come from places you just can't go.
Has anybody tried to hike in?
All the time.
Wear
Or
camo?
raft in
Yeah, did they get busted?
and busted, yeah, and arrested.
Really?
You could find
Fuck,
you could
man.
find online. I wish I knew the names of a team that went up there. That's who found the black. I used them in the video, and I credit them. So you can find their videos. They're up there for an hour and a half, trying to find stuff. And what they found up in that forbidden zone is anchored into the ground a giant hook,
Right.
or like a loop.
Yeah.
Like,
I
what
saw
would
that.
you use that for? And that would be to rappel down. That's the only reason that would be there. There's no explanation for what is this. They also found artifacts from that era, from the early 1900s, artifacts that people were there. So it's possible that they rappelled that, like they might have been standing right above that entrance. And there are reverse angles of that rock face that look a little weird. It could be pareidolia, but
What's pareidolia?
pareidolia is the mind's ability to see objects in random noise. You know, it's something we evolved to see predators in the forest. That's why if you see a cloud that looks like a Abraham Lincoln,
right,
it's not Abraham Lincoln. It's pareidolia.
The Grand Canyon thing is tied with a story about giants that they didn't talk about it here, but that they found giant bodies and artifacts, Egyptian type of hieroglyphics as they're sharing here. But the whole thing with giants is pretty fascinating. There's been so many stories about the Smithsonian's obtaining giant bodies and removing them and keeping them in hiding. But why? Why would they do that? And it's interesting that there's a lot of stories in the past about giants. And if they were to be true, I go back to that same point. It would change the whole history. It would change the whole narrative. It would confirm that there's more credibility in stories like David and Goliath and, the flood of the Nephilim. If you're not familiar with that, look it up. It's a story in the Bible where there's basically angels mate with women, and their offspring are these giants, half gods, half human, and God is unhappy with it and sends the flood to destroy them all. And it seems like there's this thing, this mystery tied with giants, and then you hear things about Bigfoot and, this story tied about the Grand Canyon. But if you're interested in giants, there's a book by Stephen Quayle. I'll put a graphic up here so you can see it. Read it. It's very interesting. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be doing a little bit more in-depth research on other things. Really appreciate you stopping by the channel. Remember, like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back.